In this video, we're going over my mock draft 2.0. This is a mock draft with no trades, and it is a realistic one that I think will happen for the most part. A lot of these picks will take place once we get to draft day on April 24th. So let's get right into it. Tennessee Titans have the first pick. Pretty much a guarantee at this point that they're going to be taking a quarterback. So which one do they take? Really looks like it's going to be Cam Ward. I saw Cam Ward play against that UCLA defense in 2023. I saw Shedeur Sanders play against the same defense. Both of them struggled mightily against UCLA, but again, also saw Caleb Williams struggle against that same really stout UCLA defense. All those teams ended up losing to the Bruins, and again, besides that, we know Cam Ward is going to be the more athletic, a bit more of the arm talent than Shedeur has, but Shedeur's got a bit more of the accuracy and the decision-making, the pocket presence of ability, whereas Cam's going to be a bit more of the hero ball player. But I do have Tennessee taking quarterback Cam Ward with their first pick, and immediately he makes them a better football team. Now, the Cleveland Browns, we think about this team for the last 5 years. They've been a really good roster, good defense, relatively decent offensive line, okay, running game. It's just been a matter of the weapons. If they could bring in a weapon like Travis Hunter, the second pick overall, and then they could utilize him also on the defensive side with Denzel Ward, imagine what that team would look like. They have struggles at quarterback and they need a quarterback, but passing up on a talent like Travis Hunter is something that a lot of Cleveland fans are not okay with. Third pick in the draft, the New York Giants. Look, if you have the understanding that you have Kayvon Thibodeaux and Brian Burns, it's probably going to be thought that we don't need another edge player, but on just about everyone's big boards, they have Abdul Carter over Travis Hunter, except for the people that are Colorado fans and people that watched a little bit more football of Travis Hunter than of Abdul Carter, but it doesn't matter what they saw. Abdul Carter is a can't-miss type of player for the New York Giants, and to be able to have him rotate and not necessarily have to start and be a huge factor day one, but a player that the New York Giants can bring in. New York really considering a quarterback at that 3 spot in Shedeur Sanders, but really it's just the terms of the value in getting Abdul Carter, probably the best player in the draft at 3 overall. At 4, look, New England's not going to turn this whole thing around in a year or two, even with Drake May seemingly improving and having a relatively good season last year once they got him in instead of Jacoby. If they could bring in Will Campbell to be that offensive line piece for them, that left tackle of the future. Again, people are going to talk about the arm length. He is the best lineman in this draft, in my opinion. It's not going to be about defensive line. They got Milton Williams from the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. So how about Will Campbell at 4? And number 5, the Jacksonville Jaguars. So Jacksonville, again, this is a team that has underperformed recently, and even with some of the shortcomings of other teams in that division, like the Colts, for example, or like the Tennessee Titans. So is Jacksonville going to go with a weapon to pair with Brian Thomas? Are they going to go defensive line? They could bring in a corner to be able to help out in the secondary, but really I don't see a path where they're going to be passing up on who's arguably a top 4 or 5 player in this draft if he had been healthy last year. Will Johnson out of Michigan. When he's healthy, he is, again, debatably one of the best players or prospects in this draft, and that is a huge need for Jacksonville. It's hard taking him over Mason Graham, but look, this is going to be a surefire player that will start right away for Jacksonville. At number 6, all the talk is about Ashton Jeanty and Pete Carroll, how that would be a terrific pairing and how Ashton would be tremendous for Oakland and him going there and him and Geno and how they would have that weapon that they really need. And I frankly can't unsee it, unhear it, and not think about how that would just make a whole bunch of sense. It's going to be your quarterback's best friend is a running back with the traits that Ashton has running through contact, making guys miss in space, home run ability to be able to score. So Ashton Jeanty going to the Raiders at 6. So Shedeur Sanders still on the board, New York Jets. But they said, Aaron Glenn did, that Justin Fields is their guy. He's going to be their starter. Well, it would be a bit the other way if they decided to draft a quarterback and they would be competing for that starting role. So I think that this is not the draft of the Jets to take a top 10 quarterback again. They've continued to do that. We're going to come out with a video just strictly about the New York Jets and the opportunities that they have if they stick with drafting quarterbacks in the mid rounds to compete. And maybe Justin Fields ends up being that guy. But for now, it's a matter of who is going to make this team better from the time they walk in the doors, and that is Mason Graham. Mason Graham at 7 would be an absolute steal for New York, and they would be better on the defensive side. At number 8, very easy. Bryce Young needs a weapon on the outside. How about a guy that will be a nice red zone target for him and Ted McMillan? He's thought to be one of the best, if not the best wide receiver in this draft next to Travis Hunter. A bit longer, a bit bigger than Travis is, but that is the biggest need for Carolina. It's going to be scoring points, and they were able to move the ball a lot last year. The defense struggled a good amount, but bringing in Ted McMillan will do, I think, wonders for Bryce. So number 9, again, Shedeur Sanders not off the board yet. This is where we're going to see Shedeur get taken. What's New Orleans doing? So with Derek Carr, Spencer Rattler, what is this team's future outlook? Shedeur Sanders is going to be the type of quarterback that would get to play in a dome. Think about Drew Brees. Didn't have the biggest arm, didn't have the most talented ability of throwing the football. No one would have ever called him a gunslinger, but how about surgical when he's got time to throw? That's exactly what Shedeur Sanders was and will be if he goes to the New Orleans Saints. So we've got Shedeur Sanders going to New Orleans at pick number 9. At 10, Chicago. Look, they were able to fill in a whole bunch of their needs in the offseason. A lot of the analysts and even fans were talking about how they need 5 guys up front. They need a center, they need a right guard, they need a left tackle most likely, a left guard, another edge opposite of Montez Sweat, another interior defensive lineman. Well, look, they were able to fill pretty much all of those, but still that need at left tackle remains unfilled. So where do the Bears go? There's a couple of options and who they could take. A lot of people have been up on Membu. Josh Simmons would have probably been the best lineman in this class if he didn't get hurt at Oregon, but the tape seems to look like Kelvin Banks would be the guy that a lot of people would be happy with in Chicago if they took him at number 10. So that's where we have him going. So the San Francisco 49ers, they lost Javarius Ward, so that's exactly the main specific need I think they go with. You could go wide receiver, but they took one last year in Ricky Pearsall. Left tackle, maybe to bring in to be the apparent heir to the left tackle spot behind Trent Williams. But Jahdae Barron, a talented corner. Don't look anywhere past his performance in the college football playoff semifinal against Ohio State. He wasn't singled up with Jeremiah Smith, but he certainly played a very large role in keeping the young superstar freshman from having a huge day. So Jahdae Barron going to San Francisco at the 11th spot. Now, the Dallas Cowboys, they need players everywhere. I'd even argue that they might need a quarterback, but the money they're paying Dak, that's certainly not possible. CeeDee Lamb could use a running mate. Micah Parsons could use a running mate. They could definitely use a running back. It's just I don't see the value of taking a running back like Amarian Hampton at 12 when they could be able to get one later on in this draft. This is the deepest running back draft I think that we've seen in my lifetime. I'm 24 years old. So where do the Dallas Cowboys go? Well, they got rid of DeMarcus Lawrence. That was some big news. Him and Micah Parsons had a little bit of that falling out. So where do the Cowboys turn on the defensive side? I mean, you're looking at Walter Nolan potentially there, Malachi Starks, Jihad Campbell. There's a couple of players. So just sort of looking through what would be available to them specifically at edge to be able to go with a player opposite of Micah Parsons. The name just seems to scream off the board. Looking at James Pierce Jr., a lot of people were thinking he could be a top 5 pick this year, but didn't have the production that he might have been thought to this season. But still, Dallas is getting a very athletic 4.47 speed at the 40-yard dash, and he's got the traits that you need in an edge player. The only concern would be, well, we're looking at 2 speedy guys, maybe someone more explosive, but James Pierce Jr. would make the Cowboys better immediately. All right, so the Miami Dolphins at 13, they're another team. Are they going to be able to replace Javon Holland or Teron Armstead after he retired after a very prolific career? That means that they're going to need a defensive back. They're going to need a corner most likely. They're going to need offensive line help. And at this spot, just sort of looking at the board here, it seems that there's going to be a little bit more wiggle room on the offensive side to be able to fill that need immediately. And how about Armand Membu? A lot of people would be surprised potentially with him dropping to 13, but Miami taking Membu, whose stock has drastically risen in the last couple of months here after that really good career with Mizzou. So 14, Indianapolis Colts. I would love them to take Tyler Warren. Given Anthony Richardson a quarterback to be a weapon on the offensive side for a quarterback, a nice safety valve for him to be able to target, and they would have liked to maybe pair another edge opposite of Latu, but if it's Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones, having a nice tight end, very creative type of player. Maybe Colston Loveland is the better prospect overall, better route runner, but Tyler Warren with the ability to hand him the football, get it to him in space, they're not going to go wrong taking him at 14 when he's probably a top 8 prospect. At number 15, the Atlanta Falcons. This one just screams to me like they should go with an edge or a linebacker type of guy. And why would you look any further than the player in Jalen Walker, keeping him in the same state? And he sort of fits that need. If you need a guy that's able to be versatile in terms of off the ball or coming up to the line of scrimmage and being a game wrecker, that would be the player that you're getting in Jalen Walker at 15. At the 16 spot, Arizona Cardinals again probably need another offensive lineman. Another edge player could help them. Again, another guy alongside Marvin Harrison Jr. would be really nice for Arizona. This one's a bit trickier because of some of the moves they made in the offseason. But I've got them picking up a corner here to be able to fill in Benjamin Morrison. Look, a very physical type of player. Morrison got hurt earlier in the season. Would have been one of the higher prospects had that injury not happened. Again, we've heard a little bit of that similar story. But Arizona, a very tricky team. Like, they seem to be one player away, and then they start to pile up some injuries. So Arizona, 16, Benjamin Morrison. At 17, Cincinnati Bengals. Looks like that offense is ready to roll with the wide receivers stacked on that side. So what are they going to do at edge? Are they going to keep Trey Hendrickson? Are they going to go get another player? I am looking at the edge potential of who that they could get. At 17, if Mike Green is on the board, you have to take him. This is the most productive player on the defensive side of anybody in college football last year. Again, you could say Abdul Carter with the TFLs, but Mike Green at 17 with his physical traits and production, you take him if you're Cincinnati in that defense. He's going to make you a much better football team. At number 18 against Seattle, this one seems to be fairly easy. They just lost Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf. They need to replace some speed and ability. So how about Matthew Golden? A 4.29 40-yard dash? Are you kidding me? You would be pounding the table if you are a Seattle Seahawks fan to take a Matthew Golden type player at number 18. At number 19, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This one just streams Jahad Campbell. Him being able to learn from Levante David and develop into a nice player. Todd Bowles, with his track record of being able to have really good defenses, Jahad Campbell would be a spectacular choice for them. A tremendous athlete, and his roaming ability, he would be a home run. At 20, the Denver Broncos, and from what I'm looking at here, they do have a number of options to go with defensively. Offense, there's a lot of really good players still on the board right here. So overall, the Denver Broncos, it just seems they need another weapon. You sort of look back at their playoff appearance when they lost that game to Buffalo, that they just needed someone else to get the football to. Like, would that be a wide receiver? Is that going to be a tight end? Is it someone that's a versatile runner they can hand the football to? So what if the Denver Broncos were looking at Omarion Hampton? I think that them taking Hampton at pick number 20, just because they know Pittsburgh is going to be chomping at the bit for them to take something else besides a running back at pick number 21. So the Denver Broncos, they've got a very solid roster, so they're able to have sort of a free choice here, going best available player, and they take Omarion Hampton of North Carolina. Now, Pittsburgh is frankly just pretty upset if this were to occur, so the biggest need overall, Pittsburgh Steelers, what if they were to take a big swing and go and get Jackson Dart out of Ole Miss? Now, this would be a huge turn of events where they're looking at getting a running back, and then that doesn't happen, where they're scrapping together who can we bring in to be able to make our team better, and who will make our team better the next few seasons. I think that's Jackson Dart, pairing him, Mike Tomlin, George Pickens, and DK Metcalf. That would be really fun to watch, along with a good defense. Now, this is where Jim Harbaugh is going to have one of the decisions of his life. If Kenneth Grant and Colston Loveland are still on the board when we get to pick 22, I think Jim Harbaugh is going to have some sort of heart thankfulness pour out of him that he has this choice, but also he's going to be torn in literal two, having to choose between those two players, but don't think he's going to have to take too long. He probably thinks that Colston Loveland's one of the best 3 or 4 players in this draft. He is not going to pass up that opportunity to give his quarterback, Justin Herbert, a lengthy, very sound route runner in a tight end, Colston Loveland. Green Bay Packers, Walter Nolan, immediately. You just look at Green Bay and what they could use. It's run defense getting better, and then a guy that's able to bring in an ability to get to the quarterback. Walter Nolan was the best high school recruit in the country a few seasons ago. Didn't have the type of career we would have thought he would have ended up having in college, but Walter Nolan going to Green Bay. Minnesota Vikings, again, this one seems to be pretty quick, and it's going to be a safety. Look, Harrison Smith is getting a little bit older. From what I saw when he played the Chicago Bears last year when I was at that game, he looked a little bit physical still. He still is bringing that punch. It's not like he's ready to walk away from the game. He's got a thing or two to share with a young player. It's just a matter of who. Is it Malachi Starks? Is it Kevin Winston Jr.? Is it Xavier Watts? I think that Malachi Starks, though, immediately coming in as a freshman and playing for those Georgia Bulldogs in the national championship. So him going to Minnesota and being ready to play early in the season, most likely, and then eventually fill in the role as being the next hitman in the Minnesota secondary for the next decade. 25, Houston Texans. There's a name that has not yet come off the big board, and that is the Ohio State wide receiver, Emeka Egbuka. That's national champion Emeka Egbuka to you. And if CJ Stroud sees that his former teammate, Emeka, is not yet taken, he's going to be making a phone call somewhere. So Emeka Egbuka going to the Houston Texans at 25. Just about everyone would be happy seeing that reunion once again. For the LA Rams, again, they have been investing so much on defense and really hitting on those picks. Again, they would have really liked it. Colston Loveland would have fallen a little bit further to be able to take him, but not willing enough to give up the draft capital. Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua, so likely wouldn't be wanting to take a wide receiver in that spot. So as far as what's available now, they were able to bring in Jared Verse a year ago, Braden Fisk. So someone in the secondary that would be able to improve their defense immediately once he steps in. And they have needs. Linebacker, corner, defensive back in terms of a safety. So if they were to go with the corner, pulling him up here for you, if they went with, it's either between Hairston or Amos. I think that Hairston coming to the LA Rams would be a pick that a lot of people would like. But in terms of not filling in another offensive lineman to take, like, you're not going to take Josh Simmons with the upside that he has. I think that Sean McVay would love taking Josh Simmons at pick number 26, another national champion. So 2 Buckeyes go back-to-back at 25 and 26. So the Baltimore Ravens, again, so what was missing from that game against the Buffalo Bills when they lost? Why did they lose? It would have probably been that they didn't have a deep play, maybe Lamar Jackson's turnovers. They need to get interior offensive line help. They need to be able to help Lamar Jackson, again, continue to get success running the football. And you're going to be getting that pretty simply out of drafting Tyler Booker out of Alabama, one of the most sound offensive linemen that you can take in that spot. So the Detroit Lions, pick number 28, where are they going to go? Don't think that they need a wide receiver. Don't need a tight end. Defensive side is going to be good if they're able to stay healthy. We knew that they had a very good defense going into last year, but it was just a little bit in need in the secondary. And once they started hitting that injury bug, everything just fell apart, as it would be for pretty much any team. So it's looking like edge. And if we're talking about production, Shamar Stewart isn't your guy. But if you want to talk about traits, it's Shamar Stewart. Shamar going to the Detroit Lions and pairing him with Aiden Hutchinson would be scary for the NFC North and who they're playing. The Washington Commanders sitting there at pick number 29, and this is a team that took Mikey Sainristil last year, defensive player from Michigan. They, against the Philadelphia Eagles, were frankly exposed, and that was the glaring weakness. That was the reason why they lost to Philly, is they could not stop the run, and they weren't able to have any shot at it against the Detroit Lions. They were able to get a couple of stops in that game, but taking Mykel Williams at edge at 29 in terms of the value that they could get from him would be a terrific pick. Buffalo at 30 again. Likely it's a corner, it's a linebacker, it's a defensive player. Why has Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs continue to beat them year after year? It's been his ability to extend plays. So someone that can track him down. Nick Scouton out of A&M, bringing him to Buffalo, and they have another crack at Patrick probably in a couple of months. Liked him at A&M, big profile, all the physical traits that you can need. Kansas City Chiefs, you want to get a versatile player, let's talk about Donovan Jackson out of Ohio State. Ended up rolling over to left tackle once Simmons got hurt against Oregon. So Donovan Jackson going to the Kansas City Chiefs, frankly, just makes more sense than a lot of other players here. You might be able to talk about value and maybe a defensive player on the D-line, but bringing in Donovan Jackson to the Kansas City Chiefs, they lost Joe Thuney. He would be a very good addition. And then lastly, the Philadelphia Eagles, pick number 32, last pick of the first round, going to have clearly their selection, but would we really think that if they were staring down the barrel and they still had a player such as this one available in Landon Jackson, lengthy. He's going to fill in for Josh Sweat, track a player down, just a dominant type of guy. All the Philly lore would be poured down on him in terms of his rides in the last few seasons, putting on a bunch of weight and then performing for Arkansas. So Landon Jackson out of Arkansas going to the Philadelphia Eagles. And that will sum up our mock draft 2.0 of what we think could possibly happen as we see it here from Ward and Hunter, and 3 quarterbacks overall going. Shedeur Sanders at 9. We saw Jackson Dart going at 21, and throughout the board, a lot of these teams being able to pick up a lot of immediate day one starters that are going to be plugging in holes, and then other teams being able to be a little bit more flexible and just take best available. Hope you enjoyed this video. We're going to be coming at you with more content very soon. We've got Mock Draft 3.0 coming very soon too. So give this a like and a subscribe if you want to, and I will see you next time.